Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Iron Canon Podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network for in-depth discussion on the lore, the High Republic, and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew Neugebauer. I am coming to you from Underworld North Studio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And as always, I'm joined from across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing good, and also, just because I mentioned it right now, if you look behind me, you can see my
There it
droid.
is. There we go. It's
So
cool.
yeah, that's the one I built at Galaxy's Edge.
Nice.
That's right there. So
There you go.
call him
At some
Beebs.
point, yeah, we can if you can figure out a way to let us see it in action somehow at some point, maybe next week
I can
or
maybe
something.
figure that out. Sure.
Yeah, sometimes fun times. Yeah, so that's for next week. This week, what we're talking about this week, yeah, with the High Republic Publishing Initiative entering its final stretch, that means one thing: rampant speculation. Also, realized the typo in there. Rampant speculation. This week, we turn our attention forward with the question: what story or era will Lucasfilm dedicate to the next publishing initiative? Can't wait to dive into that. We've touched on it a little bit, but here we're gonna present a bunch of options and see what sticks, see what happens. But let's get plugs out of the way first. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. Also, gotta say, we're out here on the. Oh, sorry, I'm awake. I promise. On the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, we got YouTube memberships. We've got super chats. So if you want to support the channel, feel free. Please do. If you yeah, if you give a normal chat and normal chat boxes down there live, if anyone's watching, uh, yeah, then yeah, well, we'll do our best to incorporate the comment into the discussion. We'll get to it later. If you super chat us, right to the top of the pile. There we go. Um, so I don't know if those work when you're not live. I think they only work when you're live, but I'm guessing there's a way to kind of chat concurrently or who knows what. Oh, sorry. It's been a day. It's been a day. Anyway, so there we go. Also, the Star Wars Underworld Discord server, the link in the description below. Pop in there. You can chat all about Star Wars, all about paper canon. There's all about memes and Star Wars memes and images and different things.
Yep.
There's definitely a Marvel channel. I'm guessing. Is there any conversation on that Thunderbolts trailer in the Marvel channel yet? If not,
No,
I
I
will.
didn't see anything yet.
Okay. Well, I will start. But yeah, there's also events that happen in the Discord server. Joel, why don't you take it away with chatting about events maybe planned in the future?
Yes, I believe this week we'll probably do another game night.
Nice.
That will be fun.
Mhm.
We do those every other week because every other week I have a meeting, but actually that might change in the next few weeks because I think my Fridays might be changing soon. So we might have more game nights on Fridays depending
Nice.
on how I feel. So yes,
There you go.
be on the lookout for that as well.
There you go. Yeah, of course you're overseeing and supervising that. So yeah, definitely. You got to be there for it. So yeah, and keep on the look. Lots of fun. I admit I haven't been in one in a while. I need to change that. I need to get pop in there. What might you guys be playing?
We might play some Outlawed. We love to play Fortnite. That's always our
Nice.
go-to,
Yeah.
especially the Lego Fortnite because there's a whole Star Wars thing that hasn't
Nice.
gone away. So
Mhm.
we love doing that. That's certainly
Okay.
one of our funner
Mm.
moments. Doesn't have to say
There we go.
Overwatch. So all
Yeah.
fun time.
Speaking of Lego, I'm gonna call an audible here. Yeah. Sorry. Before I do that audible, before I call that audible. Yeah. Ebon with the plugs. Tractor Beam Comics reviews. Wednesdays are for comics. Comics are for Wednesdays. Every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Chris Abbott and I, right here on this the Underworld YouTube channel and Facebook and Twitch, Iron Cannon Twitch as well. We chat about the comics that came out that day, the Star Wars comics that came out that day. But there aren't any new Star Wars stories. There's just Ahsoka number 3, which I'm not going to buy. I will buy Ahsoka number 5. I will buy that one. Probably not. Maybe I'll flip through it. I don't know. Buy all the variants, but Ahsoka number 3. So we're not going to chat about any new books, but we're going to look back. I've bitten off more than I can chew with these notes. Looking back on 4.5 years of Star Wars comics set between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Whole bunch of stuff happens. I'm gonna try and make sense of it all, and we're going to chat about what we think about it, how we remember it, how we feel about it, what worked, what might not have worked. Um, Especially, it'll be interesting getting into when Chris and I started up this tractor beam a year ago, this iteration of tractor beam a year ago, and how there's a way of when you're actually reviewing something, you get more intense and invested, and you can remember things. So that'll be interesting. In the notes, I finally hit the point where I can start saying War of the Bounty Hunters, Crimson Rain, and
Dang.
Gunpowder.
You don't need to be thorough with notes. It's okay.
I know, but I want to. I want to make sure I cover some bases here. So and jog people's memories. So, yeah, I'll figure that out.
I
So,
honestly don't remember the start of the 2020 run, so it's going to be really interesting.
well, that's just it. I have to refresh people and say they're reeling from everything that happened in Empire Strikes Back. So it was really well set up, especially by Charles Soule and Greg Pak. So, anyways, check that out. 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific on this Wednesday night. Yeah, it should be a really wide ranging, in depth discussion. It's gonna be kind of like an Iron Cannon episode a little bit. It's kind of the way I'm describing it. So, check that out. And then, but the wild thing, I will say this: the wild thing is, then the week right after that, October 2nd, No Time to Breathe. We're launching right into the next era with what's it called? Battle of Jakku, Rebellion. What's it called? Yeah, I just wrote this down. Yeah, Insurgency Rising. Yeah, Battle of Jakku. Issue number 1 launches right then in October 2nd.
Is that releasing more than regular? Because I think it's supposed to be done before the end of the year.
So yeah, that's another wild thing is, so that one's October 2nd. Issue number 2 is October 16th, so 2 weeks later. Issue 3 is 1 week after that. And so it's coming out of this much faster clip, meaning that Alex Segura has them all written and they're all in the can already, so they can just roll them out.
I guess that makes sense to kind of end this era before the year's out.
Is it ending the era? That's a good question. Is it ending the era, or is it kickstarting the new one? I think it's kickstarting the new one, or maybe both. Kind of this transition. We'll see. We'll see how that feels. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, check that out 2 weeks from now on the Tractor Comics Reviews. Also, Inquisitors number 4. But yeah, so feel free to. We would be honored if you would join us then. But yeah, so that's the Tractor Beam. Again, we're looking back this Wednesday. Yeah, and so give it a one. Yeah. But anyway, getting on track here. I'm done yammering. Joel, how's your week in Star Wars? What are you thinking about this week?
Well, this week I've been doing a whole interesting order viewing for all Star Wars screen stuff. Not just the saga, but all the stuff. You got the other movies and the streaming shows. And that's it. Not the Lego stuff. Sorry, Lego stuff. And so I'm not gonna bother you guys with the whole shebang just yet because that would take too long, and we have a show to do. But I did think about the first kind of 3 parts of my viewing order, which I call the Andor order. Now, why do you start with Andor? Okay. So here's why you start, which is why Andor is like a really fascinating place to start your Star Wars journey. It's all about introducing the galaxy. Okay, so Andor, start with Andor. It's a very grounded show. And by like grounded, it's like it is on the boots on the ground. This guy is just your average schmuck. Andor's your average schmuck. Like he's not involved in things. If he knows about the Force, it's like in passing. And he's just a regular dude trying to live his life. But if the show goes on, if season 2 goes the way I think it's going to go, then he's going to get more involved. He's going to get big. There's the bigger stuff's going on in the galaxy. Things are moving and shaking. And then, you kind of assume that, it's all going to lead up to Rogue One. Then you get to Rogue One. And that's when the magical stuff starts to seep in. You get to Lyra's thing, it's like trusting the Force to Jin. And then you get, obviously, Baze and Chirrut. They're talking about the Force and stuff. And then with Krennic's side of things, the Empire side, because another thing about Andor is like when you live in the Andor galaxy, it just seems like it's a regular dystopian galaxy ruled by just a very oppressive sci-fi empire.
Yeah.
But then you get to Rogue One, and then you get the scene with Vader, and then you're like, oh shoot, there's something more sinister about this empire than just your typical fascism. Something very strange. And then one of the last few moments, of course, of Rogue One, as we all know, is the Vader hallway scene. And if you're introducing the galaxy, it's like, oh shoot, who's this guy in metal armor? What's this red thing he's holding? And why is he lifting people off the ground? What's going on? And then obviously, it ends with Leia going, oh, TTI Leia going, oh, but then we spur off into A New Hope. And then with A New Hope, that's when the floodgates open. That's when it's like, well, there's this whole thing with like this Jedi Order going on. And it's like, everyone's like, well, the Force is Jedi power. It's an energy field. It connects all and binds the galaxy together. And through the Andor to A New Hope kind of 3-part viewing order, I see it as almost like you start the galaxy in sort of a grounded place, and then you ease the person into the Force weird magicalness where it sort of opens up with A New Hope. Kind of opens up a little more with Empire, but for the sake of this exercise, it really opens up with A New Hope. So that's why a part of this wacky viewing order, which I have been crafting and makes sense to me in my head at least, Andor is an interesting place to start your Star Wars viewing experience. And I think the Andor to Rogue One to A New Hope kind of unofficial trilogy is a really interesting way to view the Star Wars galaxy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Especially, I can see that being really effective, especially for someone who doesn't get sci-fi, who doesn't get just doesn't connect with fantasy elements right off the hop. That it can be Andor can be this gateway drug. Because another thing I noticed about Andor is pretty much all the characters are human by and large. Is the droid. For the most part, they're all human. And it's only really, there's part of the Ring of Kafrene. You have the droids, but I wonder if we can kind of understand droids more. And then you have Jeddah, everything, the weird, two tubes and the Borgullet, and then you get the Cantina scene in New Hope. So all that, also the weird alien weirdness, eases them into that. Yeah. If Andor works as a gateway drug for folks who are just don't want to suspend their disbelief and are just led along into it. Yeah, I can definitely see it. I can definitely see that. Someone like maybe Tony Gilroy himself, right? Who isn't, it just, he gets it. He understands clearly what we've seen with Andor and Rogue One. He understands how space fantasy, space opera works and what its appeal is. But he knows how to speak to, probably because he feels it himself, folks who don't really connect with that appeal immediately. And so Andor, definitely is that show of, this is this fictional but not so fictional setting that, when you get to the space battle, Luke hearing Obi-Wan use the Force, Luke. There's a trajectory, there's a pipeline, there's a trajectory that someone would have to cross. Hopefully you wouldn't lose people in that, but hopefully it's enthralling enough that they'll remember everything they saw in Andor and say, oh yeah, this is kind of like that. This is kind of like this. This connects to that. This is the folks who are making this Death Star, which we're going to see more of in season 2.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure of. Right? We've seen the last second of season 1. We'll see more.
I don't know. In D23, they said Krennic's going to be in it, so there's that connection.
So, I'm not sure. I'm sure, but come on, it makes sense. We're going to see something about the Death Star because it's about like Rogue One is about the Death Star too. So, as well. So, obviously we definitely see more Death Star in Rogue One. Do we see more Death Star in Rogue One than we do in A New Hope? No, probably not in the third act of New Hope.
That's true. We're in the Death Star for a good chunk of the film.
So. But yeah, so that's true. But yeah, I get it. I can see it. I can see it.
That's just a small part of this whole
Yeah.
wacky everything viewing I've been doing. And if we ever get a chance, I'm
Mhm.
going to explain it because it's very bizarre, but it
Yeah.
makes sense in my head how it works. So if I can just
Yeah.
explain it properly, it's fun. But no, I regardless of the wider stuff, there is something about watching Andor to A New Hope
Yeah.
and that pipeline. I think season 2 of Andor is really going to cement this.
Hmm.
That makes for a very unique kind of viewing order,
Yeah.
which I'm excited to see fulfilled when Andor season
True.
2 comes out.
Like unlike Rebels, where Rebels starts off the hop with, I'm saying off the hop, off the bat with the Jedi kid.
Right.
But that more for kids to get into it, I guess. What do you mean by everything viewing? Very quickly, what do you mean by that?
Oh, you know
Enlighten me.
how we have like chronological and release
Mhm.
order for like the saga stuff and all those stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I decided to come up with a unique viewing order for all on-screen Star Wars. So the saga films,
Okay.
spin-offs, and the streaming shows, and make them work in sort of a thematic whole to kind
Right.
of tell the story of this great Star Wars galaxy.
So I mean, why not start with the Acolyte or Young Jedi Adventures? I don't know.
But I wasn't sure where to put in the adventures. Well, that would be in chronological order.
Yeah, I'm being
Uh,
just keep chronological. Okay.
but that's for
Yeah.
chronological order. I have
Yeah.
like a more of a thematic thing going on,
Okay, I see.
which I will one
Okay.
day hopefully try to explain.
All right. Maybe yeah. Maybe we'll give you a due date for November. We'll have an episode and you'll take
Sure.
it away.
I mean,
How
I
about
got the list down. I just need to kind of like
that? Yeah.
write my notes.
There you go. Nice. All right. My weekend Star Wars it happened right on this your channel. Um, uh, you know, so on the flagship, you saw Dominic raise not one, not two, not three, but four paper stories on the flagship podcast. We'll get to the hyperspace stories, the Bad Batch story, and um, the Audible original story. You know, this was really a full circle moment for me. I kind of joked to him, like, "You're doing paper cannon stories on the flagship, Joel and Chris. Our work here is done. We can pack it in and go home now."
We can retire.
We can no, but so it just got me thinking. My origin story for this year podcast was um in the context of a Lego special. So they were talking mainly about uh, Rebuild the Galaxy, and so on Thursday, and in the context of uh what's the Vader's Castle like Halloween special, I forget what it was called. And you know when that came out, and I was all, oh, I hope they mention the Kevin Scott Tales from Vader's Castle. I hope they mention that, because clearly that's an inspiration for that. Also, Rise of Kylo Ren was a bit of an inspiration for that, but mainly,
That was the big one. I mean, they got the red, so yeah.
yeah. But the whole premise of it is Kevin Scott's Tales from Vader's Castle. So I'm like, so they didn't mention it because it's just wasn't necessarily on the radar. And so I was all, instead of being salty about that, uh, why don't I start a podcast where that kind of comment would just come up naturally, because keeping an eye on the paper canon, eye on comics and books, and having awareness of things, and not that they aren't aware of what those comics are, but for that to be an immediate thought, immediate connection, thinking about the paper to screen pipeline and where that actually does come to play. um yeah, yes, the river definitely flows in one direction primarily, but in that case, that was a very clear instance of Lucasfilm them taking a whole premise and a concept that started in a comic book and putting it on screen. I know it's an animated Lego special, but um it was just this funny moment where, yeah, so Dommy, he talks about the Bad Batch, or not Dom, the whole podcast, Chris and Ben as well, the Bad Batch comic, and this Audible original Padawan's Pride, and leading to talking about Beware the Nameless, and the High Republic story, and then of course what I consider still paper canon, Jedi Survivor, or the Third Jedi video game. I guess it was a slow screen week. Slow week for screen news, but yeah, it's just funny to think about and reflect on, you know, where, Joel, how far you and I have come in the last 2 and 3/4 years, how far Chris and I have come in the last year. Yeah, just we're staples here, and so, um, yeah, I have my troll question thought of. I haven't done a troll question on the flagship in a while, but I have it in the bag. Hopefully, they ask it. I'm gonna pretend to give people a hard time. All right. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you have anything to add about that.
Nope, we made
All
it.
right.
We
Yeah.
retired it. Ah,
All right. End
one
stream. No,
100 episode to go. Let's keep doing it.
no, we're not. We ain't going anywhere. That's a joke. We're not going anywhere.
You're stuck with us, audience.
You're stuck. All two of you who are watching. That's fine. Yeah. Although I should probably figure out a way to get the algorithm up. Anyway. Yeah. So that's my week. That's my week in Star Wars. I will say, yeah, I do have. Did get my copy of Tears of the Nameless in from Indigo. Some people it was just on the shelf. Why not grab it, or just online grab it? Yeah, so gonna dive into that soon. But yeah, before that, we do have some news here on the Iron Cannon podcast where we talk about paper cannon primarily. Yeah, the hyperspace stories, the Bad Batch Ghost Agent, again, as the flagship talked about. We're gonna talk about it again. Give it the all Iron Cannon paper news treatment. Yes, the Bad Batch is back with a comic book, which, hey, my books, that's great. I'm here for it. So this is from darkhorse.com. The Bad Batch is back for another high octane adventure set during the Clone Wars. Their mission: to hunt down the mysterious separatist ghost agent who executed a daring heist on Coruscant. The thief's trail leads Hunter, Wrecker, Crosshair, and Tech to the seediest corners of the galaxy, where kingpins and thugs threaten the clones' mission and their lives. Have the Bad Batch met their match? And this comic is, of course, written by Michael Morrissey. This is hyperspace story staple Michael Morrissey, art by Reese Hannigan and Elizabeth D'Amico. Colors also by Hyperspace Stories staple Michael Adier, and cover, which I will show up here. Cover is cover number 1, written covered by Valeria Lux Favocci. Really dynamic, really exciting cover. So yeah, this is again set during the Clone Wars. The 5-issue run, it starts January 15th, 2025. It's only in what, 4 months, 4.5 months. Yeah, around 4 months there. 5 months. I can't do math. This is a great cover. This is a very very dynamic cover. And again, look, we're going back to the Clone Wars. They mentioned, this has Tech, this doesn't have Omega. It has Crosshair before Order 66. Not that Order 66 necessarily affected him, but this is looking at a pocket of story that we didn't really get to have, because we only see them for one arc during the Clone Wars. And this we're finally, and we get to see what they can do during during the show, during the Bad Batch. But this, we get to really see what they can do to separatists, what they can do, hunting down a separatist agent here. And how, especially Hunter, that's another thing. Hunter's tracking skills during the show, he's have been pretty underused. I think he's basically a reg in a lot of ways. It's just that because he's kind of different, he stands out. But here, yeah, I think given this mission, I think he's gonna come to the fore. Yeah, and it's Dark Horse, which means it's also hyperspace stories, which means it's all ages. But I never feel kind of written down to, maybe the art style is going to be a little different, but a little less photoreal and a little more focused on action. But that's fine. That's good. It's going to be fun. So Joel, when we saw this news, what do you think of a Bad Batch, revisiting the Bad Batch in a comic book form and during the Clone Wars?
Perfect. That's where it should be. I am. Whenever anyone says, "Well, we need more Clone Wars episodes," like, I always kind of roll my eyes, like, got 7 seasons, and you got a pretty good finale. out of it.
Yeah.
Which by the way, when I have our time, I got to read you this very interesting possible Siege of Mandalore early draft Lucas era. But we'll get to
Interesting.
that. We'll get to that another day.
Yeah.
It seems pretty legit. But
Mhm.
anyway, my point is, but I'm not against, I don't know, Clone Wars comics in a different style. That's like exploring stuff the show never
Mhm.
got around to, or just like I don't know stuff that just wants to go in deeper, like a Clone Wars
Yeah.
era book that like wants to like really fill in the world building of like local Republic militias and local separatist militias and
Mhm.
mini civil wars and stuff like that. And I think for here, but besides that, I think for here that like the Bad Batch's story truly begins with Bad Batch show. That's
Yeah.
where they get interesting. That's where they get cool. Well, not get cool, but they get interesting.
Yeah.
So I think here
We
it's
get
like
to know
perfect.
them.
We get to know them. We get to see them really kind of become themselves. So I think
Mhm.
here it's like in this comic where it's like, there might be some fun character, but probably more for action and just a fun
Yeah.
little story of like, here's the Batch during the Clone Wars doing what the Batch during the Clone Wars would have done.
Mhm.
That's probably the best place to have it. Where I feel like if we had done that show, it would have
Yeah.
probably gotten stale really quick. But on here in a nice little 20-issue comic, I have how many issues is this going to
5.
be? My little 5-issue comic
Yeah. It's gonna short one.
run. That's perfect.
Mhm.
Perfect. That's where this stuff should be. This is where those sort of
Yeah.
fun, smaller adventures can be had.
Mhm.
I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Excited.
To say, again, like it's hyperspace stories, which is interesting. Thinking about hyperspace stories. So hyperspace stories initially were these or this anthology last year. Star Wars Adventures, hyperspace stories, all set throughout. Just I don't even know entirely why it was called that. It was just cool anthology. And here's a series called Hyperspace Stories. What we also thought Hyperspace Stories was gonna be were these original graphic novels on Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan and different characters. That keeps getting delayed and delayed and delayed. It's apparently still on, but they're saying no, let's use that label for this run instead. Because the Qui-Gon book keeps getting delayed. Well past the Phantom Menace 25 party. So yeah, here we go. Hyperspace Stories again. You're right. It's going to be this sort of one-off adventure. They have a way of bringing character in, though. They really do. And maybe kind of fortune cookie moral lessons for younger audiences, but still, I find those meaningful. I mean, uh, I think it was Boba Fett and this Wookiee girl, and uh, Boba Fett, saves the this teddy bear that this Wookiee girl has because it reminds her of her father, and so he has this honor among thieves kind of deal, which she does anyway. That's just an example of what Hyperspace Stories was able to do here. Yeah, I do expect, especially with the 5-issue run, like we've said, more action, more fun adventure, cool dynamic art like this cover again, showing the Clone Force 99 has a new mission. And they're just falling from the sky, and really this gripping. You feel the movement there. But yeah, there probably is going to be some quiet moments, maybe because we've met them and we've seen them go through this journey for 3 years of losing their home. Now, Michael Morrissey is going to have to think, okay, look back when they had their home, when they had the place in the Republic and the Grand Army. They were kind of lifted up as a special, weird but special unit that could take care of business. So, uh, again, curious to see, as I always say, I'm curious to see. I'll look out for, yeah, how much character, how much story, what they do, because again, we haven't. This is the first foray into this. Maybe my last thought is interesting precedent. I wonder if this is setting the precedent for similar runs to explore other eras. Because again, hyperspace stories were basically one shots that kind of had a little through line with that teddy bear, Teddy Wookie. But here this is a 5-issue run. Could there be other 5-issue runs? Almost like Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire, in that sort of way. So yeah, there you go. Any last thoughts on this guy before we move on?
Nah, I'm just kind of cool. Nice to have the Bad Batch back, and I think it's
Yeah,
the perfect place for it.
there we go. Speaking of news, speaking of Thursday, Padawan's Pride. It's here. It's there. It's on Audible. Go listen to it. Dropped without any announcement whatsoever. But it's as Tom discovered live on the air, free with your Audible account. So if you have an Audible account, yeah, they just dropped this Audible original. It's basically an audiobook. It's basically the same kind of thing as the Mark Thompson, different characters. So it's written by Brian Q. Miller, narrated by Kevin Kemp. And here's the description. I found the description from Audible. If you haven't gotten into it yet, if you're thinking of getting to it, Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi and his Padawan Anakin Skywalker star in this thrilling galactic adventure set 3 years after the events of Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace. When a Republic spy goes missing on the moons of Varl, the Jedi Council asks Obi-Wan and Anakin to infiltrate an underground pod racing circuit run by a crime boss believed to be holding the spy prisoner. With Anakin posing as a hotshot racer and Obi-Wan as his attendant, tensions between the two threaten to run even higher than usual. But when Obi-Wan is forced to leave Varl, Anakin is on his own as he faces a series of increasingly treacherous races that will determine his fate and that of the spy. Master and apprentice must use all their Jedi skills in this action-packed tale of cutthroat competition, deadly deception, and ultimately what it means to be a Padawan. And yeah, so this is the first time I'm doing a news bit of something I'm like more than like basically 2/3 of the way into. I was able to get into.
Wasn't
Yeah.
Charles Soule comic supposed to be their first mission?
No, I don't think so. I think I think that's a little later. But he's 12. I don't know. I'll have to check that. I'm not sure, but yeah, here definitely, yeah, pushing. It's interesting. We'll talk more. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it, but I need to finish it. I will say, Kevin Kemp. It's interesting. He's kind of he's British. I think he has a bit of a Cockney accent.
Yeah.
So they got someone who sounds a bit more like Obi-Wan with a lot of American voices, like Anakin and some others. Does a great job. Pretty much. I don't want to say as good as Mark Thompson because nobody's as good as Mark Thompson, but does a good job. And yeah, it's interesting to pick up Anakin's story when thinking he was the kindly, friendly kid 3 years ago, and now he's already this thrill-seeking. I mean, he's already this thrill-seeking kind of rebellious spark. Now that's come to the fore, and to see him have to wrestle with that and have to wrestle with gaining new responsibility, especially when it says he's on his own here at 12 in this dangerous situation. So I've been enjoying it, going by a pretty fast clip. I haven't listened to an audiobook in a while, so I'm kind of missing maybe some details, but overall, yeah, it's pretty short. It's only about 3.5 hours, 3 hours and 45 minutes. So it's for younger audiences, but start with Star Wars younger audiences, it actually puts this younger character into some real peril. It puts Anakin into some real peril, and of course we know it's Anakin, so he'll be okay. But
Spoilers.
yeah, pretty significant. Yeah, I mean, eventually, actually, it does have some interesting foreshadowing. I will say that too. But it's interesting that they gave this actually pretty significant character beat in terms of the mix of the young and playful and the thrill-seeking rebellious Anakin that we see in Attack of the Clones, and to some extent in Revenge of the Sith. They give it in this audiobook that they dropped on us without any word at all. So I don't know if you've gotten a chance to listen to it or listen to some of it. What do you think of it? If you haven't yet,
I haven't listened to it.
Yeah.
I was just that was an accident. Like someone just clicked the send button. And like, oh, whoops. Well, it's here now. Too late.
I don't know. Well, we'll say it isn't. Say it was on purpose. What do you think of the just here you go without any announcement?
kind of weird. But I don't know. Maybe just like it's an audiobook. So it's like didn't cost it that much to make, so you
True.
don't need to like market it that much. Here you go.
Yeah. I
Sounds
mean,
good.
and it doesn't actually cost, and it doesn't cost a credit if you have an Audible account. If you're getting credits anyways, it doesn't cost a credit, so you just get it for you just grab it. Yeah. Um. It. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little weird how they did, especially again, pretty important character beat for this central character of the of the Star Wars the Skywalker saga.
I mean, it's
Uh,
still an audiobook at the end of the day, though. So
true. Yeah, true.
for
But
little kids or at least younger audience, so it's not
uh,
like it's a adult
no,
novel.
it's not like an adult novel that goes through gripping. It's written to Anakin's age, sure, but give it a listen, and you'll see what I mean in terms of the character beat.
I'm just talking from a marketing perspective why they might not have decided to do that.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, again, and because that's what I'm saying is because it's an important character beat. It's surprising they didn't do any kind of announcement or anything, but promotion. But you know, hopefully people don't sleep on it. Maybe that is the marketing. Maybe that we're all saying, "Oh, look at this wild, crazy thing they did, releasing it without any announcement." I don't know. So, are you gonna get into it? Are you gonna give it a shot?
Maybe. I mean, I'm gonna wait on. Well, I'm gonna do. I guess so. Here at the nameless. Although now I gotta realize. But I never finished Temptation of the Force, so it's
Oh,
like,
okay.
I don't know where to begin anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Finish Temptation of the Force. Do that. No. Again, this one's again. This one's only what 3.5 hours,
it's true.
something. So yeah, and it's a fun, exciting read. So or listen. There. It's got the sound effects, it's got the music, it's got the whole Star Wars audiobook thing.
Oh yeah,
The the full 9 yards. So
those are always fun.
there you go. Fun times. All right. Speaking of Temptation of the Force, from the High Republic Publishing Initiative, yeah, we got thinking about what the next publishing initiative is. So Joe, I'll let you take her away.
Yes, the next publishing initiative. All right, so I guess before we sort of make our guesses and place your bets, people. Place your bets in the comments. Make the money. I kid. Um, I think the first thing we need to discuss is what do we define as a publishing initiative? Because
Mhm.
I think that is a very broad spectrum, and I think High Republic might have corrupted our little brains into what those are. I'm kidding. But
Yeah.
what is a publishing initiative? Journey to the Force Awakens was technically a publishing initiative. All the Journey twos
Mhm.
were
That's true.
publishing initiatives. You could argue the Aftermath itself was a publishing initiative. I mean, it's a trilogy, but it's kind of with a special little thing, a
Mhm.
little bit. Back in the olden days, Shadow of the Empire was a publishing was a multimedia initiative. It had a game, a book, a comic. I think that was it. I forget. I think there
A
was
soundtrack.
soundtrack. Um, and then of course you got the NGO, which was a 19 book initiative.
Right.
And then High Republic, of course, is a multimedia project initiative with books, comics. They probably wanted a game and technically a TV show, but even though that was more of a parallel thing.
Mhm.
Um, but that was the most ambitious thing yet. So I guess the question we have to ask ourselves, well, two questions we got to ask ourselves are:
Yeah.
one, are they going to go from publishing initiative to publishing initiative right away, or are we going to get a break?
Mhm.
Let things breathe a little bit before we get into the
Yeah.
next big thing. And two, are what is sort of the what does how big are we going to make this big publishing initiative next? Like for all we know, I mean, we could get Journey to Mandalorian and Grogu in 2026.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but you never know.
Mhm.
So I guess I'll throw that question to you, Matthew. Is what do you consider a publishing initiative? And I guess
Yeah.
how big could the next one be, if depending on how big a break there is?
Yeah. I mean, I do think we do have two clearer models, right?
Right.
Yeah, we do have the road to the sequel trilogy books. We do have other like tie-ins like Catalyst or whatnot. I would say so. I would, pretty much, again, we're picking this up literally 2 weeks from now, a week and a half from now. But from Endor to Jakku, it was the Aftermath trilogy, the novels, but it wasn't just that. It was also a Shattered Empire. It was Battlefront 2. It was uh I'm trying to think here. I mean, eventually it was Squadrons in the Alphabet Squadron trilogy. It was all these different stories, and then now it's going to be the road to the Battle of Jakku, or whatever it is. Um, it was Lost Stars eventually, ultimately. Although that
Was
was
that
also
part of
road.
Journey to Force
It
Awakens?
was, but it also did have a chunk of story set in that year, and culminates in the Battle of Jakku. So I would say something that the story group coordinates. In this case, in the Endor Jakku example, it's something that the story group did coordinate. And I
That's
do
true.
think there was some backroom strategy of saying we're going to actually focus the first chunk of stuff on this, not counting the comics, not counting A New Dawn or some others, but um, there was a concerted effort to say let's tell this story, and
That
they really did.
that's
So
true.
there's that. But then of course, then there's upping the ante with let's get these 5 authors to Skywalker Ranch and call it Project Luminous and have them.
It's been more than
This
5 authors, has it been?
it would yeah, and eventually, yeah. There's now 9 or 10, but the initial 5 of Team Luminous, get them together and really put their heads together with Michael Siglain and other story group folks, put their heads together and actually do this really defined publishing initiative called the High Republic. So I think they're both forays in trying different things. Um, I'm wondering. I don't know. I again, which of those two will they opt for? For some reason, my gut is saying, well, you can go either way because
Well, you know which one
you know,
I think will go the more High Republic direction. We'll get to that one.
yeah, and so maybe that's another way of putting it is which of these options that we'll go into will they opt for the High Republic, like branded, integrated, have the Slack chat. Um, Another publishing initiative you could almost say was the comic runs, the comic crossovers from that Chris and I are going to talk about on Wednesday. That was a little bit of like that, just any sort of like cross-platform storytelling. Um, but I think we want to make it more robust, like Enter the Jakku or the Nile conflict. That telling that story. Um, I my gut for some reason is saying, um, High Republic was a lot of work, was a lot of coordination, a lot of clear putting this in front of people. There might be, I mean, some fatigue. There's a reason they've made phase 3 stretched it out so much more because people are saying this is too fast. Like I'm not caught up or whatnot. And then the next book's coming out a few weeks later. So that, but that being said, the flip side is High Republic is one of the most popular things they've done. Um, I mean, we could say in terms of relatively speaking, it is easily,
In terms of fandom and publishing fandom, at least.
yeah, it's easily the most popular publishing thing they've done. High Republic books probably sell more than the others.
I would actually be curious to know about if that's true.
Yeah, that'd be a question, but um, it's the one thing that gets its own panel at Celebration.
But true.
There's the publishing panel and then there's the High Republic panel. So yeah, again, it's super popular. There's so many High Republic cosplayers, High Republic Twitter accounts and Instagram accounts just devoted to specific characters, and so there's this specific connection, that like I'd say I have it. I'm part of it too to some extent. I literally say we're the home for the High Republic on the Underworld network. So yeah, I'm gonna have to change that shoot in a few months, but um, yeah. So it's a good question. It's good business to do another one potentially, but if unless there's the fatigue. So there's that. I definitely think there's going to be give it a year. I don't think we're gonna see. I mean, maybe they'll announce something in Japan. Maybe they'll announce something in New York Comic Con 2025. Um, yeah, we definitely do need to let High Republic sit on its own for a while because it deserves to. It's such an achievement, such a uh, just a an achievement and a thrilling. It's gonna be a thrilling conclusion over the next few months.
Oh yeah, I mean,
So
I was talking,
yeah,
I've seen people who are like, on the one hand, it's like,
yeah,
we're kind of ready for it to end, not in like
yeah,
a High Republic. It's just like,
sure,
you can only have so much of a good thing. But
mhm,
it's sort of like at the same time, it's like we're excited to see an
yeah,
end, right? Like,
yeah,
you and I, we can go on about like how like, oh, is it the beginning of the end? This is how it all leads to the saga. But at the same time, it's like let's just give us a good closing act to
sure,
the story that started with
mhm,
uh, Lie of the Jedi and ends in
yeah,
close the close the book, as they say.
yeah.
Um,
So
but yeah,
again, to say, yeah, I'm there too. Like looking forward to this ending in a good way.
right.
To say, yeah, and then let it sit on its own for a good year and say, oh, High Republic wasn't that great. Because if you introduce the next thing too quickly, that kind of devalues it. And so I don't think
Right.
they want to do that. I don't think anyone wants to do that.
Right, especially with everybody slowing down in general. I do
Yeah.
wonder.
Mhm.
But no, you're right. And also to go back to Jakku for a hot second,
Mhm.
this reminded me of a conversation I was watching, looking at.
Mhm.
Um, how someone was talking about how it's kind of wild how yeah the Jakku thing is very a Lucasfilm publishing thing
Mhm.
because they were talking about how as far as they're kind of concerned, uh, yeah, I don't think Jakku was ever meant to be was probably ever like a big deal in the TFA script. It was just junk planet
Yeah.
with star destroyers, and then Lucas is publishing like, hey, let's make this like a big historical event thing.
Mhm.
And we have
Yeah.
so we sort of built on it with Aftermath, and then later with this Battlefront
Alphabet
2,
Squad. Yeah, Battlefront
Battlefront
2.
2, and now this thing. It probably wasn't a grand uh, development with
Grand Plan.
but it's certainly been built upon very nicely. So yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
can see that, and maybe I can think of, and maybe we'll see something like that as more movies kind of
Yeah,
come back into the forward eventually.
that's true.
Um,
A few last thoughts. I mean,
yeah,
also, I mean, all what I was saying before, you're right. It is tied into this film, uh, Force Awakens, and that we have the trailers of the Star Destroyer on Jakku on the planet, and so, yeah, like you're saying, build it in. This model of a publishing initiative, it's a lot more flexible. Um, you can just pick writers ad hoc. They got to be in cahoots, but it isn't. It's more organic, maybe. Whereas with a High Republic type thing, you got to build a roster. You got to build a team. It's a team sport. You got to build a roster, um,
definitely more
and
planned out for
and
sure.
plan it out. And yeah, they there's these 9 authors. At least 5 of them. They're probably going to take a break from Star Wars themselves. I'd imagine. They got other things they want to do now. I mean, Charles has just finished his both of these things, especially. So uh, they'd have to give them a break or find a whole other set of authors to do this. Also, again, if they do this so quickly, it would kind of feel derivative, very Disney derivative. Oh, this worked. Let's do a sequel, Lion King 2, or whatever. So yeah, I do think they're gonna do. There's a reason we're having this conversation today. They
The
are gonna
animated
do it
Lion King
again.
2 is actually really good.
Yeah,
But
fair.
yes,
But you know what I mean? Like all these sequels that they always do. There's a reason we're having this conversation. They are gonna do another one. Uh Clearly High Republic was that successful, but probably not for a good year.
right. So let's just start making bets, shall we?
Yeah.
And I'm not really, but
Mhm.
okay. So possible ones. Let's just kind of. I didn't. I when I listed these, they were sort of like I didn't like from least possible to most possible. The last one is probably most possible, but
Mhm.
I kind of did decide just to kind of go a bit at random. So the first one that we have listed, at least I wrote down, was a post Tross era book thing.
Hmm.
Maybe in the style of Aftermath. We are getting a Ray film hopefully soonish. There's rumor of 2025 filming, so that'd
Yeah.
be interesting. Um, you know, that film will be 15 years after
Hmm.
Tross, so there's that. Um, and again, as I talked before, if streaming and movies are dwindling, that does may open up a lot more spaces for
Yeah.
uh, just books and comics to cover certain areas again.
Hmm.
Um, Now the pasta though, that's possible. I mean, it is possible that they could do. Although again, this might be too derivative of Aftermath, like part of the journey to New
Yeah.
Jedi Order a niche thing, where it's like
Hmm.
one book is like Ray, day one after Trost book, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think it's possible we could get like a Journey to NGO. I want to say Journey to Trot, but we did that. We got that already.
Yeah.
Journey to NGO style, maybe novel or two, where it's like Ray the early days, and like maybe like
Hmm.
even if like plot wise stuff doesn't connect, maybe we'll see like some thematic stuff
Yeah.
about Ray early days and how it more connects to um the the movie, so I can see that. I don't think it will be a High Republic style post
Yeah.
Tross Grand Galaxy thing where it just deals
Hmm.
with all the chaos after Tross.
Hmm.
So yeah, I think the best bet for a post Tross thing is that journey to NGO style books and
Yeah.
comics. Um, where like again, I wouldn't read them to necessarily like get like plot points or like, oh, we're gonna see that planet because that planet showed up in the comic. I mean, unless of course the script is a lot more completed, which is something they definitely are trying to do more now, where
Hmm.
they don't have to rewrite the film um when
Yeah.
they're making it. So maybe there'll be
That's
more
fun.
coordination via the script and stuff. But definitely in terms of like some thematic stuff with Ray and where she might be going, I could definitely
Hmm.
see that. But Matthew, what's your thoughts on a post Tross storyline?
Yeah.
Immediate post Tross storyline, not 15 years later.
Well, the idea of connecting like what happened in between.
Right.
I guess so. What's interesting with both the examples we have are these larger scale historical events, right? The aftermath, the end of the war, and then of course this whole Nile galactic wild Nile confrontation. Is there any sort of large scale historical thing happening? Is it possible? Has the final order just decimated any sort of the first order and then the final order just decimated any sort of galactic society? That's my wonder. Because Hosnian Prime is destroyed. The whole government is destroyed. Yeah, there's still hyperspace, there's still communications, but what's the infrastructure? What is the society like? Ray is on her own on Tatooine doing her thing.
Well,
So
she's not going to stay on Tatooine. She's going to be there for like 5 seconds and probably
no,
move back to.
yeah, it just the question. Maybe if anything, what the story would be then is you know Poe trying to rebuild things. Poe and maybe Finn to some extent. Maybe,
And
uh,
Rose.
yeah, and Rose for sure. I mean, maybe we get a canon version of that Lego special. That'd be funny.
I'm all down for that.
Yeah, I mean, like one that doesn't involve time travel. But yeah, again, this would be definitely a good candidate for the story group of saying, okay, we want to tell some road to some tie-ins now that we're finally doing tie-ins again. We have acolyte tie-ins.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and I think I don't mind it being kind of similar derivative to the road to the sequel trilogy. I think that makes fits perfectly because this is a sequel-ish era story and film. And so, to have that same kind of strategy, it would actually be a good callback and a good recovery, if you will, of that strategy. And so I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't find it redundant. I'd find it uh fitting. You kind of like you were saying with fitting with the Bad Batch. having
Right.
it fits with those. So again, it's just maybe, I mean, the problem with Bloodline, the problem with, and Bloodline was great, but the problem even with the Aftermath trilogy was the black box. What will the story group, what will the creatives on this Ray film be willing to share with the authors of this, and I think would be a lot smaller. It might be one or two novels and maybe a YA novel and then a comic book or something, right?
My kind of gut reading on also the post trust stuff,
Yeah.
and I could just be wrong, and I could just be being naive and hopeful.
Hmm.
But because they've been working on this thing for a long time, it was like
Yeah.
Lindelof, and there was like a writer's room beforehand, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Now, I think this writer room thing was just a story group, and people were just gave telephone wrong. Um, but I have this like hunch in my brain that unlike with the sequels, I kind of now I could be wrong, totally
Okay.
wrong, but I feel like story group, the creative story people have been mapping out not like a more detailed, or at least as detailed as they can be, outline of what the post trust Ray NGO film
Hmm.
timeline will be, and have a and will have, and I could begin to be wrong, and
Yeah.
have more of a sense of like the overarching events of what happened to get to this film, compared
Hmm.
to where I think with the development of the sequels, where
Yeah.
it was a lot more looser, and maybe, I mean, again, we will never truly know because so much of it is in, who knows who had what ideas, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of it was more looser, or just like vague-ish, and not in, and like people had different ideas, of course,
Hmm.
like of what who Snoke was, and maybe of how Kylo Ren fell to the dark side. I
Yeah.
think and stuff like that. Where was here, because you're only gonna do one movie, and then hopefully you'll see how it does, and maybe get a couple sequels out of it. But also because you've been working on this for so long. I mean, gosh, for what I remember hearing rumors about this pre 2023, so
Right.
they've been working on this for several years now. Uh, Maybe they have a bit more of a broader idea of like the back lore
Hmm.
for a lot of this, and because of that, maybe that then we'll have more of a better they'll maybe they'll be more open to doing stuff like this, because like they have a better idea
Yeah.
of like, okay, we kind of now know what we want the general idea of the post trust galaxy to be. We want this to kind of be the thematics. These might be kind of the factions that have been developed in this time, and then authors, here you go. You can,
Yeah.
work around that. But that's just
Well,
my
not work
vibe. I could
around
be
that.
wrong.
I don't know about work around that. I mean, that sounds like
Or
some
or
good
work
notes to give to
or work
some
into it.
authors and say, "Hey, here are the notes. Can you spin this into a
Narrative.
story?" Obviously, we can negotiate some things because
Right.
that's how these things often work.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, something like Catalyst was a lot clearer and a lot tighter. There was an idea. I'm guessing there was an idea about how Endor to Jakku happened, but then Chuck Wendig really played it out and teased it out into
But we
3 novels.
know, I mean,
You
we
know,
know that not everything was, because we know, I mean, I
yeah,
get to mention this now,
yes.
because
Go
we
ahead.
just found out
Mm,
that Chuck Wendig
yeah,
wanted to use Thrawn instead of Rex, because he originally
yes.
pitched it as Thrawn, but story group's like, no, we want to bring out Thrawn somewhere else. So he made Rex, and that's why Rex is very Thrawn-like. So we know that not
Yeah.
everything was planned out. Um,
No, but and that's we know how the story group works, but
right.
yeah, I think this one again it has a shot. I think would be a very thin
Mhm.
type of initiative. But yeah,
Right.
like you're saying, that there is material, that there is ideas, and it's the story group. They're type of folks who are, and these creatives, they're the type of folks who have thought about these things. If it was someone like something Ryan Johnson, I mentioned Bloodline. The one thing Claudia Gray did get was something from Ryan Johnson. So
I've heard Ryan Kess contributed more to the backstory of things
I
than
believe
we
he's
know of.
the type of nerd who cares about this stuff too, right?
So,
JJ's the
uh,
type of nerd who doesn't, which is fine. But
I mean, I think he did contribute ideas. I just don't know if they went along with them by the end because it's sort of like,
That's
well,
awesome.
he might have had ideas for what Snoke was, but then it's like, well, I'm not going to be the one who tells that story. So,
Yeah.
it's like, here you go. And then Ryan's like, well, let's maybe Snoke's this. And then JJ got to come back like, oh, shoot, well, okay, let's Snoke's a clone. There you go.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure.
because also,
It is.
not to make this too much about Andor to Jakku, but it's like,
Yeah.
I kind of also doubt they were like, no,
Mhm.
Andor to Jakku is going to be our Thrawn trilogy redux, but with Rebels characters.
Right.
Like, I doubt they knew that in 2015. Or like
Yeah.
this Mandalorian named Din Djarin would be a big deal. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, that's our
Mhm.
first idea. So here's one you put in.
Yeah.
Phase 4, the
Yeah.
transition to High Republic to Late Republic. So for me, I don't think I think this will just happen. I think this will happen, but I
Mhm.
don't think it will happen in any sort of organized way. I think this will just be, let's just tell stories in the High
Mhm.
Republic that have nothing to do with the initiative,
Yeah.
and maybe like in that they just kind of build off each other. We'll start to see more of that. I don't think they'll. I really don't think that, like. I mean, I'm sure there's some fans who want it, but like, oh no, guys, there's this phase 4. Here you go. Journey to the Acolyte. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
And in some ways, those Acolyte tie-ins are kind of like that in
Yeah. That's kind of my
small ways.
joke, right? Like
Yeah.
that from San Diego.
Right. So it's kind of like that, but I think this will happen, but it will happen in because again I was reading a tweet with like High Republic ending, but that doesn't mean we're gonna say goodbye to the era. I'm sure
Sure.
we'll get plenty of stories in the era, still.
Mhm.
Just they won't be part of this big Nile versus Jedi publishing initiative narrative. I think they'll just be, oh
Yeah.
yeah, this was set during 300 BBY, and this crisis broke out, and or the
Yeah.
story about these Jedi. So yeah, I think this will happen, but not as an initiative. I just think this will just happen. Just
I
happen.
used to. I mean, I put this in as a bit of a dark horse. Just kind of throw. I mean, that's the thing we do, right? We like throw stuff
Yeah.
against the wall and see what sticks here.
Mhm.
Um, I'm specifically interested in almost after the Acolyte. So that's the thing with the Acolyte canceled. Save the Acolyte. Come on, do what's the right thing. But if it isn't, let's actually keep telling that story. In insofar as they can tell that story on paper, right? If they aren't going to tell it on screen, might as well might as well tell at least aspects of it in terms of the Senate and the High Council and the Jedi. So yeah, you have the Vern book set 20 years before. You have Dooku Jedi Lost set what? How many? Like a few decades after, or it
I
starts
guess
a
they're
few
a living
decades.
force part of this then too.
Living Forces, yeah, would be that kind of that whole thing. Even all the not quite Master and Apprentice, but um yeah,
Close
but
enough.
especially Dooku Jedi Lost, right? That really starts to see the turn. You know, maybe if here's just me right here. I mean, I do think Keeve's turn will happen. We'll see that in at the end of Phase 3. But if it doesn't, and by Phase 4, I don't really mean Phase 4. I mean kind of carrying on this High Republic story. What if it starts with Keeve, the Kevin Scott Keeve novel, where she leaves the Order. She doesn't turn to the dark side. She leaves
Is
the Order.
Kevin Scott getting a novel, or is this just
Well, I don't know. Well, whatever he does, it's Kevin Scott's going to tell that story, right? It's his story to tell.
right?
Um,
I
of
really
Keeve
doubt it would
leaving
be
the
a Trial of the Jedi. I don't think it would be.
No, well, again, it's Kevin's story to tell. That's the fascinating thing. If it's maybe it's another audio play, like a standalone audio play,
Not sure. Yeah.
that would be perfect because uh I mean we're getting Tempest Breaker in December. Again, that this kind of all this ends with Dooku Jedi Lost by Kevin, an audio play by Kevin Scott. And so yeah, again, you're right. I don't think it's gonna be certainly not gonna be the Project Luminous style thing.
Mhm.
Um, it might not even be like the story group saying we're gonna set out to tell this story. Maybe one day. I don't know. Like maybe one day if they don't have enough authors coming to them saying, I want to tell an aspect of this. I want to tell a sliver of this. because I think they'd be open. I know they'd be open to, you know, an author coming to them and saying, "Hey, I want to tell a sliver of, of how we get from the late Republic, the High Republic to the late Republic." I mean, I would consider a canon version of Lucino Plagueis in as part of this for sure. Um, that kind of thing. I'm talking about the fall of
I
the
mean,
Jedi.
even if
I'm
Acolyte
talking,
continued, it wouldn't have
yeah,
gotten us to the Phantom Menace because, like, I
no,
doubt they have Osha grow up to be 100. I mean, that'd been so cool.
no,
But
and
it,
we wouldn't get like, well, Dooku Jedi Lost. That story only gets us
right.
so far too, right? I mean, counting the Ventress parts, but the Dooku parts, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, Living Force would be the last, and that's an extreme end. But yeah, I think
I think this will
maybe
happen.
one day. Here's the if they don't get, I think there will be an appetite. Maybe in 5 years, maybe Phantom Menace at 30. Maybe Phantom Menace at 40. Something to really, if it's Phantom Menace at 40, if this hasn't been told yet, then they might do a High Republic style. In shoot 2039. Whatever. If we live that long, but
Be
um,
healthy and keep exercising.
yeah.
That's what
But
I'm doing.
you're right. It's probably going to be the ad hoc sort of. We have, maybe let's map this out, and maybe Leslie Headland map this out. Maybe she can be a consultant on this. Maybe she can have her hand in writing. I don't know how she is in writing novels and whatnot, but
I mean, I
you
don't
know.
think you need to go with anything Acolyte set up. I just think you just need to tell stories in this time
Well,
period.
no, but that's the thing is, um, that's what I want though. That's what I'm calling for here, is to say, the type of compromises we see Vern making, the type of turn to the galactic turn to the dark side that Plagueis and Chimera and Osha represent. I want to see that explored in different ways, in this sort of coherent way that we would have gotten at least a hint of and a start of in a season 2. But let's get novels and comics about it instead. Maybe harebrained, crazy, wild idea. It wouldn't count to Save the Acolyte, but would count it in my heart. Whatever season 2 was, let's get a novel.
I don't think they'll do that.
No, but why not, right?
I think
Get
I'm generally
something.
curious though. Like, what would they do with Plagueis though? Like,
Mhm.
you think that's a pretty big character? You think they? I bet
Yeah.
they're very cautious about that character though.
Or again, get James Lucino to make a canon version of his novel.
He's retired, sadly.
Get him out of retirement to make a canon version of his novel. He just needs to edit little things here and there.
I don't think. Yeah, we know that. But I mean, I actually am genuinely curious, like what they actually legit are thinking with Plagueis.
Yeah. So
That's
maybe I'm kind of talking myself into this. Maybe what I mean by phase 4, I mean Save the Acolyte, tell the story from the Acolyte to Dooku Jedi Lost, effectively. But start with Kiev.
Well, yeah. I'm actually am kind of surprised they haven't just announced, hey, Kevin Scott's doing a Keith novel.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. Is
Unless it is in Trials of the Jedi, which it could be.
Kiev's departure from the Order signifies that the Jedi are starting to lose their way. That, to my mind, is what that's about. And that's why it's mentioned in Dooku Jedi Lost. That's why that's the first instance of it, of her any mention anywhere that she's the one that fell before or left before. So it's foreshadowing, right? Because Dooku's departure is that the Jedi have lost their way. I don't want to be part of this. It's a little more a lot more self-serving in the audio play than in Tales of the Jedi, but yeah, it's still the same kind of thematic idea. So that's, I want them to explore that theme in that, and also that the Sith are creeping their way into the light again, the limelight again.
Yeah, I'd be curious what they actually would do then.
Yeah,
I
and
kind of
how
think
they do
about
it.
it.
Mm.
So I'm like, well, again, because Plagueis is kind of like I think like one of those very special characters that like
Yeah.
they're not gonna just use willy nilly.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, we'll have to see. All right.
Hmm.
Uh, what do I have here? Okay, a post TPM to Attack of the Clones thing. Another big gap of time that really hasn't been explored
Hmm.
until today. Um,
Yeah.
I
Until
think this
Thursday. Little
go
did we know. I did
this
these.
week.
We did these notes before that happened. Here we go.
That's true. I actually am kind of think. This is another one where I feel like it would probably be more ad hoc. I don't think it'll be very organized. I
Yeah.
think it'll just be here's some stories about the post Attack of the Clones to Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones era. Maybe you get like a couple of novels here and there. Like they're not really that coordinated. Maybe
Hmm.
just people building off them. I can't see like a big High Republic thing. I don't think you don't want to get too big when something really big's about to happen. Like this is kind of the
Yeah.
scary calm before the storm.
True.
So I don't think we'll get like any really big initiatives. I think kind of like what you want from that unofficial Phase 4, just like here are some novels. Maybe we'll get another
Yeah.
Dooku novel, maybe a Grievous origin story
Hmm.
novel, Anakin Obi-Wan, like more Anakin Obi-Wan adventures. Maybe
Yeah.
we'll finally get a comic miniseries or two. And that's how I see this going down. I think it will be quite
Hmm.
small. They're one of these small ones. Just
Yeah. I mean, I don't know about small. I'd say more medium because this is a gap. I was almost nigh on convinced that this would be the next ongoing comic. I don't think that's true anymore, but I do think this will be eventually an era of major concerted focus because we don't know, we don't have the story, we don't have, except for as opposed to on like Thursday where you do actually have an important story beat that kind of kicks this off, right? This whole Anakin, we don't have, maybe it's a specific an Anakin thing, but also then, like you have this, it's the rise of the Separatists and the precursor to the Clone Wars. I think there's a lot of
we actually do
very
have
clear,
two Padme novels. So, oh,
and we have the Padme novels. Yeah, I think there's a lot of clear things that we know happen that could provide fodder for interesting character stories, could provide fodder for interesting political statements that if authors want to say something through these. Yeah, now it's kind of backstory, mid story, if you will.
give me a
But
good Dooku one.
yeah, like yeah, what I'm with Dooku. What I don't we don't necessarily need to see all the intricacies of the clones getting hired and getting made.
I want
I do
that.
think here's another thing. We do think Ethan Sachs wants to continue the Jango Fett story. We know he does. Uh, so and maybe this audiobook are kind of feelers for the appetite for something a bit more concerted. Is it going to be, maybe it might be almost like a Luminous style thing, but in miniature. Possibly still very coordinated, still get a bunch of authors in a room and say, let's map this out. Let's see, uh, let's see what this is. Maybe, Attack of the Clones at 25 is coming up in 3 years, right?
That's true.
Uh, maybe I like that's the thing. I think a lot of us actually want this too and want this to really be filled out. That's why it really was, I think, the front runner or the front runner, the second place or the runner up rather to the theory about what the next ongoing comic would be. So let's make it a publishing initiative. Um, again, not as ridiculous as High Republic in the massive coordinated sense, but um, yeah, let's do something a bit more plotted out again because we have so much from George already. So
Like the
let's
Sifo Dyas story. Like, why did Sifo give us a story about Sifo Dyas? Although that's another one where, like,
yeah
on the one, I also kind of wonder if this is where Tales of kind of is mucking up the
Yeah,
works because
we can do some of that too, and we get a bit of Sifo in Dooku Jedi Lost as well, but
so
yeah,
that's another one. That's something where I'm curious about
mhm,
too. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, all right. So here's my wild card.
mhm,
Um, the post Dawn of the Jedi pre Sith War initiative.
mhm,
Um, this is my wild. So this
yeah,
era would be long after the Dawn of the Jedi storyline,
yeah,
but before all those Sith wars started, because the Sith were started in 5000 BBY and the
mhm,
Jedi were founded in 25,000 BBY.
mhm,
That's a bit of a gap, don't you think, folks?
yeah,
It's a bit of a wild card. I
mhm,
don't know how that works because I have no idea where the Mangled film's going to actually happen. I hope it
sure,
does, and I don't know where it is. I'm sure it's still probably very much in the infancy of production.
mhm,
Maybe we don't know. Um, but it would certainly be a place to tell stories.
mhm,
I just sort of thought, well, that's an interesting kind of empty lot there. Put
yeah,
something there, maybe. You could go full ham. Uh I got nothing really after that except this is just kind of my wild card. I don't actually think this would happen, but it's an odd place if they didn't want to go straight to Old Republic because of the derivativeness of
mhm,
that brand. But
yeah,
also, but if they wanted to tell even ancient or Jedi stories, but didn't want to also interfere with the Mangled film, there
yeah.
you go. That's my wild card. Don't I'm kind of not convinced it will happen, but I had to put it here.
Do you mean so by this? Do you mean sort of like an intermediate thing between? So we'll get to Old Republic at the end. Spoiler alert. Do you mean like something between like the prehistoric Mangold and the and like the Old Republic proper, whatever
Pretty
that
much, yeah.
is.
Like this would be before all the Sith started coming about, and it's like being
Yeah,
what were the Jedi doing before they had to fight the Sith? So be
yeah.
that kind of intermediate period.
I mean, so this whole Tales of the Jedi it is
No,
taken.
that's even before Tales of the Jedi. Tales of the Jedi is
Oh,
Old
so
Republic.
before, okay, Tales of the Jedi would be kind of our Old Republic, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's interesting. Again, it would be to see. I think the way this would happen is, and it would be, yeah, it would be this ad hoc. Unless here's the thing. So I'm just kind of spitballing here. Um, if there is something really interesting laid down in Dawn of the Jedi, right?
Right.
That a lot of people latch on to and connect with and say, what is this like 500, 1,000 years later? What's happening now? Um, how does this evolve into that? And that a bunch of authors come and say, hey, we want to do this, we want to take this on. Or if if the story group, if Lucasfilm is like, let's just pull a pull a Hail Mary out of left field. Mixing sports, I know.
Mhm,
But say, let's just do this.
mhm.
Nobody's thinking about it except we are now. Nobody necessarily is calling for this, but let's just do it and see what happens. Because that's the thing. We said lots of empty room. That's the nice thing about High Republic. No one had thought of doing that. It makes perfect sense now. And they've made it make perfect sense. This 200-year
I
thing.
actually thought it made sense back then because it was like not even Legends covered this era of time,
Yeah.
so it's sort of like
Yeah. And a lot of Legends didn't cover when the High Republic is. I don't know if you're saying Legends didn't really cover this
no,
era.
it never covered the High Republic era.
It didn't cover High Republic. So um
Also, I don't think Legends also covered this era either. I
yeah.
think this is very much a you have the Dawn of the Jedi, and then a
Mhm,
bunch of nothing, and then the Sith
mhm,
form, and
yeah.
an Old Republic.
So yeah. And so yeah, I think yeah, I mean I think this is a dark horse too. I think yeah, like I don't really see this happening anytime soon, like you're saying. But it's definitely an option. It's definitely a possibility. And it like you said, with lots of empty room, it basically you're free to do whatever the heck you want.
More or
like
less.
like
More
that's
or
the thing. It's like with Visions and with this latest like in Rebuild the Galaxy, it is in this whole parallel. These are these parallel universe type things where you can do whatever you want. Here, it's actually in the universe, but you still do whatever you want. There are going to be rules. There are going to be themes. You have to be consistent with what Star Wars is.
There's
But
certain historical events you have to kind of remember to take place.
yeah, but here it's so distant from any of that.
Mhm.
Maybe that is the perfect time. The thing about the Acolyte is one of the criticisms of it maybe is that it really plays with the themes and casts a dark pall over these themes of light and hope, and kind of questions our experiences of light and hope, questions Osha's experiences, but does it so close and so tied into the era of the Skywalker saga that it just felt off. I think is part of what happened there. Here, it's so distant. We can just contrive something to say, yeah, there's a reason. Maybe the Force is just out of whack, and so we need
Maybe.
to, almost like the Kelvin universe in Star Trek, a little bit. That the goal will be to bring the Force back into whack.
I mean, I know that's why people. I mean, I know people got problems with the aesthetics of modern Star Trek. It looks a little too shiny, but
Yeah.
no, I get what you're saying. I got one more Dark Horse, by the way,
Yeah.
idea, just because I just thought of it right now as we were talking. That's not in the notes.
Sure.
Okay, here's the wild card. They'll never do this. There's no way they'll ever do this because this will affect too much.
Yeah.
We do another legacy thing and we just tell a story far in the future.
Yeah.
There's no way in heck they'll do this because that means the movies would have to adhere to it, and there's no way anyone's going to do this. Like, maybe if you said it 1,000 years, but eventually we're going to get to that 1,000-year mark. We probably all be dead, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
They'll never do that, and I don't know how you would tell the future of Star Wars aesthetically on paper. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but nothing's impossible. But again, they'll never do that because that means the movie would have to adhere to it, and that was one of the big issues with Legacy. Was Legacy Comics told a story 100 years in the future, and books had to deal with it, and they did not. And you could tell they didn't really want to deal with it, but they had to, kind of, and it just caused problems later down the line.
I mean, there's the parallel. Star Trek did that on screen.
But true, but that's screen though. I'm talking like paper canon.
Yeah, that's true.
Directing screen canon where to go in the future. Like if if we jumped 100 years into the future on screen, that's one thing.
Yeah,
because that's just kind of the hierarchy.
The way flows, yeah.
But there's no way in heck that paper can will ever dictate to screen can. Hey, this is what Star Wars: The Next Generation, starring Patrick Stewart.
Well, my point is, at least with the aesthetics of what Starfleet is in 1,000 years later, or whatever, 400 years later, 600 years later, they did it really successfully. Like, it's recognizable, but it's recognizably different.
Legacy was good at that too. So
yeah, so the aesthetics of it is possible. It's just the real world storytelling reality, like the river, which way the current flows generally, right? Yeah, again, we're throwing things against the wall, seeing what sticks. Not everything's gonna stick.
I do think my Dawn of the Jedi one has a good chance if Dawn of the Jedi actually happens.
Yeah.
So next one is another one of those more ad hoc ones where I think it could happen. I don't know how of like, let's get Flag Lost with the movie math out 10 to 3 phases worth of stuff will be in, and that is the Dawn of the Galactic Republic. So this is very much the story of the rise of the Republic that we know from the prequels. After the Sith Wars, after what a lot of the canon material has seeded throughout basically for a couple of years now, of like this kind of galactic Silmarillion War of Wrath style final battle that kind of caused the world to begin year zero. I think the second age of Middle Earth, folks, for like, the war against Morgoth has ended, but the world got destroyed, but now we got to rebuild, and it's going to be all shiny until the next bad guy, Dark Lord, comes and forges some rings of power. Watch Rings of Power, by the way.
Yes.
Rings of 2 is really good. But no, it's good. I I don't know how organized they make this one, but I definitely could see a point where it's like, let's just tell a couple of stories at the beginning of the Galactic Republic,
Mhm.
unless they want to make this a screen canon thing too. Who knows? But again, I think this is another one of those could be interesting. Kind of, the Sith are gone. It's not the High Republic. Let's kind of see the beginnings of rebuilding galactic society after so much of canon has made that final war out to be such a apocalyptic thing. It seems like, at least. And
Yeah.
it kind of it'd be like, well, it's like we don't need to retell the Darth Bane trilogy, and we can kind of like it's close to that, but it's not
I
that.
want to
And
interject. I want to interject. I
oh,
want to interject.
yeah,
You and I have very different ideas of what I mean by this. Just putting that
okay,
up. Completely different. I mean, a lot of actually what was laid down in Legends, frankly. I specifically do mean Darth Bane. I do mean Rusan. I do mean Rusan Reformations. I
well,
mean
some version of that has
a
probably
canon
happened.
version of it, but
Mhm.
um I mean something a lot more like Rings of Power. That
Yeah,
we have a very clear sense of when this is, of how this connects, um, of what happens, of everything that George has laid down. So I mean, like you said, we don't need to retell Darth Bane. Yeah, let's tell Darth Bane. Let's get Drew Karpyshyn in. Let's get the gang together. Let's plot this out. This is the one that I'm not.
I
I
don't
don't know
think
if
they're
it's
going
going
to
to
do
happen,
that. Mhm.
but this is the one I want. This is the one I want, and it's the one I want to be like a Project Luminous style.
Really,
Really
not
tell
the next
this.
one.
Not the next one. The next one's interesting, but the one I think I really want to be a really Project Luminous style thing. And here's the thing: is
Now, wait,
um
I have a question though. Do
yeah
you want us to start with the last Sith war with Darth Bane involved, or do you want like sort of like the war's over and now we're doing the aftermath?
um like well so both right, and so start with the Darth Bane War, because I mean in both canon and Legends, it's that Bane War that
Mhm.
leads to the Rasan Reformations, that leads to uh this new regime change, um that this was
Let's
this
not
terrible.
let's first off, let's assume that the Rusan reformations aren't going to happen. They're
The
not going to go.
version of it, right? Like the fact that there is
The
like at
spiritual
1,000.
successor.
Yeah. So at 1,000, because so here's the thing. So Chris makes this point here. They haven't seeded much about the of the old Republic. They did have there's this comment, and we'll get to that in a bit. That the old Republic is there. I think there is this signpost, and they have seeded at least quite a bit about at least hinting at things kind of around this time, about what 800 years before High Republic. High Republic is so the reason one of the reasons High Republic makes sense is that they didn't want to go all the way back immediately. They wanted to go very incrementally. I think they still want to go a little incrementally, maybe just longer. Go 800 years back from that. Of course, it's what 650 years before Phase 2, which some things again seeded in. We have this idea of Bane. We have this idea of uh, this reform of the Republic to becoming the Galactic Republic. This move towards expansion, even into the expansion to the mid rim. Uh, the the a deepening of the Jedi relationship with the Republic. There's got to be, and even in the real world, we see the rise. Just here's kind of my put what the political statement they could say is rise of nationalism, rise of right wing populism. Um, kind of like, and I know you kind of disagree with how I read kind of the Marshall Plan and post war Germany, but there was this thing of this was terrible. Let's never do that again, kind of thing.
Isn't that what the Rusan reformation was? This was terrible. Let's never do that again. Jedi, disband
Yeah,
your armies.
that's exactly what I'm saying. Is let's see what that terrible thing was, and then the response. Even to say phase 1 and 2 or phase 1, is what's the terrible thing. Um, and phase two maybe be shorter. What's the response? What's the aftermath? How do we build back? Build back better. I think there's a lot. I don't know when we get this, but I again I don't know. I wanna be confident about it, but I think there's a lot of room here. I think it actually makes the most sense, frankly.
See, actually, I thought if we would ever tell that story about what happened in that last war, I thought it'd be on screen. I always felt like that was what he would do. Although I don't
Possible,
know, but then again, I don't know. I mean,
unless incorporate a screen thing in it, and then I don't know why not.
I'm sure. I mean,
Think
they could do a screen. They could make the war the screen film, and then kind of the initiative, sort of the aftermath of that.
yeah, that's another possibility, right? Is yeah, have I mean I don't know. It's a little it's a little too big for you tell a whole war on screen. I mean George tried in episode 3 and realized no, we need a 7 season animated show for that. One thing you also said is Young Yoda.
Or you could tell like the last day of the war. So
You know,
I think that's
I don't
another
know.
one where I'm like, would they ever tell that on screen too? Because they've been very cautious about using young Yoda. So
Yeah, but
yeah, that's
if
another one
there was
where,
ever a time, I mean, we have younger Yoda in High Republic, so you know,
yeah, I mean, he still, yeah, kind of. I always think of young Yoda as like, oh no, this is kind of like a very different person. Like in the
yeah, like
rebellious stage,
yeah, there you go. Then
rebel
we got Grogu.
cause without rebel, I
Yes.
am.
No, that's when he gets Anakin to break him out of the hospital.
Ex- yes, yes.
Mhm.
I mean, I don't know, but also because Darth Bane did first appear in animation, and then the sort
Yeah.
of like well, I'm like, cause that part I'm always like
Mhm.
never quite sure what they would act, where would they actually tell that
Sure.
story. But like, I can definitely see more like the aftermath of like the rebuilding part happening on
Yeah.
paper. That's just my gut.
I
Yeah.
mean, maybe here's the thing. Maybe why do we have to assume that screen and paper have to be that separate? Sure, screen can lead the way, but have a filmmaker who cares about these books because they exist. Leslie Headland proves they exist. Um, say
I doubt they hire people because of that though.
no, but um, someone who might be interested at least, and say the first chunk of the war is going to be in this film.
I can think
It's
the last chunk of the war, you could tell the grand finale
Yeah,
was fun.
because that's true. There's got to be a satisfying, meaningful conclusion.
See, that's how I imagine. It's like
But
the story would be like Darth Bane's last stand.
yeah, okay. I was kind of rethinking here and there, but I don't know. I some sort of integration with the film.
Well, actually, really
Maybe
enough, that's where Old Republic will come in. I guess that could
yeah,
transition in
sure,
because
but
I've always thought
mhm,
Darth Bane last stand or whatever that. Whenever Bane goes down, or whenever the Siths finally go down,
mhm,
you do that as the movie, and then you can kind of tell the aftermath and the prelude as the books and comics.
yeah,
So basically, just act like it, but maybe as a film this time. Um, and, maybe possible. I mean, I guess not everybody's like J.J. Abrams, I guess, and J.J. Abrams hasn't done a Star Wars since 2019. So we've gotten a bunch of other people
sure,
who are work more closely with the studio. So
mhm,
um, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right on that front. Um, so
yeah.
kind of in some ways, these sort of next two kind of could interplay with each other.
I mean, in Tales of the Jedi, they sort of do, sort of, right? Like, when does Tales of the Jedi end? The comic.
That's like 5,000 years before Darth Bane.
Okay,
So
that's five. Okay, so never mind. That's 6,000. Okay,
yeah,
but
Darth Bane's definitely did something else.
I guess I'm thinking like the Drew Carpetian thing. I mean, that's Revan. He does Revan too. Anyway, keep
But
going.
anyway, yeah. So I mean, yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe something. Because the way I'm kind of looking at it in this
Mhm,
ancient past thing,
mhm,
you could have like this weird organicism between paper and screen, where it's like, okay, Mengel's
mhm,
gonna tell the Dawn of the Jedi story, the formation of the Jedi. That's a pretty big deal. That probably should
mhm,
be a movie. Then you can get someone to tell the Sith War, I'm gonna call it Darth Vader's Last Stand, or the Battle of
Yeah.
Rusan. I'm not, let's not conjure images in our head that's
Yeah.
gonna be exactly like adaptation of that
No.
book. Let's
No.
let's not kid ourselves. But like for our fans' sake, let's just call it that.
I
And
mean, I will say Avar uses this kind of battle meditation thing.
well, you can have aspects from the book, but I just don't
Yeah.
think we're gonna just retell the historical event
No.
again.
Yeah.
But um, and then you can kind of have books and comics kind of be the fill in the gaps in between these sort of much more larger
Yeah.
events, where it's
Mhm.
like, okay, Darth Bane Last Stand, the movie, and then before that, the Old Republic Initiative, and then after that, the Dawn of the Galactic Republic Initiative,
Yeah.
and then backspace, more books, backspace, Dawn of the Jedi, the film, big event.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention, guess who else is around 1,000 BBY? It's a fellow by the name of Tar Vizsla, who I've always thought of is sort of Revan like,
He's
except
not.
set at a different time. Well,
I don't.
a
Nah, I
Mandalorian
don't.
Jedi, and he doesn't go dark side necessarily, as
But
far as we
Revan
know.
doesn't like the Mandalorians. He fought wars against
Okay,
Mandalorians.
fine. Tar Vizsla, at least, maybe part of the thing. Actually, do we know when Malachor is? Do we know what time that is? When that one is?
We don't.
Siege of Malachor.
We don't, and I wouldn't look up Wikipedia because Wikipedia's Old Republic stuff is just, it's a mess. But it's
I'm just
definitely,
convincing myself on this right now.
I would just say, generic 1,000 years ago, or like everything else. We definitely know there were Sith
So
and Jedi around fighting each other. So
yeah. So I'm convincing myself of this even more. This 1,000 BBY, like Jedi, Sith, Mandalorians, three-way conflagration. Everybody curved in on themselves. Everybody out for their own gain. The Jedi think they're doing what's right, but they discover this quick fix on Malachor, and they push a button, and that's kind of what Yoda is getting at with Ezra, right? And they say, okay, that was terrible. Let's never do that again.
who
Um,
knows? I don't want to convince. Don't convince yourself about a story that might never. They might do
I
something
know,
completely
of
different.
course not, but we're theorizing here. We're theorizing
That's true.
of. I think there's a lot,
Mhm.
and again, the Vizsla Mandalore angle and the Sith angle and the Malachor angle and everything
Tar Vizsla,
building.
played by John Favreau.
Sure, but I mean, in terms as a publishing initiative, I think there's just a lot. Yeah, I mean, we'll want to see more of that on screen potentially if we don't get it on screen, that's the thing. Again, this 1,000 BBY thing. Again,
Well,
this is what I want.
that war lasted probably for 1,000 years as well. So
Yeah, maybe
it did in Legends.
that'd be
That
epic.
war lasted from 2,000 to 1,000 BBY. So I think they're
That
sticking
I
with
don't know
that.
how realistic that is though, but of course we're dealing with space fantasy, so how realistic does it have to be?
The Jedi Order was founded in 25,000 BBY. So,
True. We
and the
got to
Sith Order
get
was
Alan
founded.
Hickman. Get Alan Hickman to write something. I want Alan Hickman to write a Star Wars. And here's the thing, Alan Hickman, he can do both like epic old republic, like large scale. What are the midi chlorians doing? The Wills. If we ever get a Wills story, it would be Alan Hickman. I'm just randomly talking right now. But then he can also do okay, to connect that with everything happening in this great Jedi Sith war at 1,000 BBY, Jedi Sith Mandalorian war.
Well, that certainly would be because a lot of the origins of the stuff we see in Star Wars that we kind of
Yeah,
all know kind of
yeah.
starts there, at least even in Lucas's head.
Again, that's why I want to see this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, that's what Old Republic is. That's Old Republic. You just described Old Republic.
Maybe they're one and the same. Maybe the things are one and the same. I'm just saying it starts 5,000 ends 1,000.
Yeah, that's Old Republic.
Yeah.
That's the Old
Okay.
Republic.
Maybe we're talking about one and the same. I'm just saying one's a specific moment in it, but at the end. But yeah. Anyway,
No, no. I mean, that is that. Those are the Jedi Sith Wars, 5,000 to 1,000, and yeah, the end is sort of the the, the culmination of it all
Mhm.
in a way. That's why I think you should do Old Republic as like an anthology where each phase is like
Yeah.
start in 5,000, and then like maybe phase two is like 2,000, then the final phase is 1,000. So you can
Yeah.
kind of
Now
cover all
that
your basic.
yeah. So that's the way of maybe saying both of these at once. Okay. Now I get it. Now I see this. Okay.
You
That
see the
makes sense.
vision. You
I
see
see
the
the
vision.
vision. I see the
I mean,
vision.
yeah, yeah, and then, maybe we'll get lucky, and I mean, I think that you could coordinate more than we give them credit for maybe these days, and
Sure.
like they can get like the Darth Bane's Last Stand, the movie, as sort of your unofficial climax,
Mhm.
um, for all of this. Um, and again, that's a big deal. That kind of is this is sort of the birth or the destruction of old galaxy and the birth of the galaxy we kind of have lived in
Yeah.
for the Lucas galaxy in some ways, you could argue.
Yeah.
Like this was Lucas's backstory for his backstory. Just
Sure.
right with the Sith and the Jedi and all that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think we'll get something like this, and I think it will be pretty big.
Mhm.
I don't know when. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Um, it's certainly it's again. This is where I kind of question of like how much of a break are we gonna get? Because this seems like a big endeavor too. I don't.
Yeah.
Oh, also, this is when Darth Moment was kicking around too, so Charles Soule could tell the Moment story.
Yeah.
So that's that's going on somewhere
Yeah.
here. This is where the Sith fought the Drengir. This is where the Sith battled
Yeah.
that cult that started the thing that takes over Afra's mind.
Oh, the
Uh,
ascendant.
yeah, this is where the
Yeah. I
Ascendant
mean,
Sith.
that's the thing. How much do we want to tie in all this stuff and make it a main thing?
Well,
Um,
there are definitely seeds that Paper Can has been putting in throughout its whole history, and then obviously you've got
yeah.
Darth Bane.
Yeah. Lady
Uh,
Corvax is 1032 BBY.
Yep, yep, we got that. There's always been hints of Sith witches and the
Mm.
Malachor thing, as you said. I don't know if that's where it ends, but certainly that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Whatever happened there. Um,
It seems like that's kind of the final thing. But yeah, like we were saying, okay, now that like I see this whole thing about an anthology series where yeah, 5,000, 2,000, 1,000, you know, that I can that I can definitely see working well.
and you could save some room for like some shows and stuff because like it's a what 5,000 to 1,000 is 4,000 years worth of
Yeah.
story. You don't need to cover every day.
That's
Um,
true. You don't need to. You can't.
the
I guess
author
the
just
question is,
the author just putting it like day one, day
yeah.
two. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, the real question is, what would the through line be then? Because between phase two and phases one and three of High Republic, there's a very clear through line about the path of the open hand and the Nile and the nameless. That they did a fantastic job
Mhm.
making sure that phase two was incredibly important for both phase one and three. So, what would the through line be over that large of a span? It would probably be a Hickman style, mind blowing out there thing. We need Hickman to do this.
I would just think that how each flare up between giants that sort of affected both of them, and then how they
Yeah,
recouped and decide, okay, that's how we're going to try and kill each other again.
yeah.
Um,
Or it could be like an all this has happened before, all this will happen again type of thing. And maybe the theme, the through line is this kind of evil is cyclical. Maybe even do the legends thing of saying, oh, this is kind of similar to the rise of the Galactic Empire a little bit. But using this massive super weapon. I mean, that's the thing about Malachor. It is a Death Star type of thing. But I mean, I don't know how much we want to lean to that. But in terms of um, the Jedi, I mean, maybe this is the through line. The Jedi tempted to use, like I was saying with the rings, right? The Jedi tempted to use this great source of destructive power seemingly for good. And it culminates in Malachor. But there could be something like the Starforge in 5,000, or something else we haven't thought of, or
that's true. I mean,
something. some way of manipulating the midi-chlorians to create life. Darth Bane would or Plagueis had to get it from somewhere, right? Maybe
But
why not from Jedi trying to experiment on these things?
and also, like, are we gonna have like, is there just a singular Sith Empire? Is
Yeah,
there like, are we gonna go the full Valkorian? There's a Sith Emperor who's been alive for 5,000 years, manipulating
yeah.
everything. I don't know, right? I don't know when they. I mean,
Mhm.
last the one thing I'll say, Jordan Mason has said that he's heard like there's old Republic shenanigans always in the wings. So I have a feeling that they're definitely working on something for this era. I bet they
I
all
mean,
kind of. I
yeah,
wonder
like
they
they
want
have,
to.
yeah, like they've said this. They said that Old Republic, and it's also the thing we all think of, right? I think
Right.
people are. I mean, I'm wanting this whole Rusan thing, maybe as the last slice of Old Republic. Um, yeah, maybe. I mean, this is what most people are thinking about. So, yeah, we have Chris's comment here. But they have seeded some things in,
Mhm.
and I don't just mean Momin. I mean, even in High Republic, there's this mention of this ancient Sith.
I mean,
That
Star Wars number Charles Soule's Star Wars, they do mention Darth Bane. Remember that?
not really. I'll have to look that up.
Oh,
Um,
it's great. I'm gonna send it.
even interestingly, even this Padawan's Pride, there's legends about the Hutts and their origins too. So maybe, I mean, here's the other danger there though with all this, and that's the thing I was saying with the Ascendant and with Momin is, I mean, that's the danger with Star Wars always is how soon do we want to turn backstory into main story? For George, it took a few decades for him to do the prequels. With Lucasfilm Publishing, it took them until 2019, 2020, 2021 to do the High Republic.
Remember COVID
So
though?
yeah, and because of COVID, but and that was sort of this. I mean, that was nothing that was seeded in about that. This is just a brand new thing. So that's the thing. There is a lot of this laid down as backstory. So so again, this might still be a few years from now.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I can definitely see that. And it's also interesting because, like, if Dawn of the Jedi happens, you know,
Mhm.
we're not even gonna start with the Old Republic. We're going
Yeah.
all the way back.
All the way
We're
back.
going to the beginning. When the first Jedi was born. Oh, by the
Mhm.
way, I sent you the Bane thing in your Facebook.
Okay. Good.
If
Yeah.
you want to look at it to remind yourself.
Sure.
Um,
All right.
so yeah, I think that something like this will happen. I
Yeah.
think we're very much spitballing here what form it's going to take. I do think it will be a
Sure.
big thing, though. And I think
Mhm.
you and I think now that we're in agreement of like this is all one big thing. I think this is
Mhm.
all Old
Yeah.
Republic. I mean, the Old Republic is an era now. Remember that. Remember in
Yeah.
2023 when they had the big here are all the eras for Star
That's
Wars.
what Finn Raider here is referring to. Right.
Right there we got the. Oh yeah, that's right. I mean,
Mhm.
we can. They have the Dawn of the Jedi era. That's another era
Yeah.
in the timelines book even. So
Right.
there's something. There's something
Mhm.
there. We're not crazy,
Mhm.
but we
Yeah.
are. But
Yeah. Well, we're some of these were more plausible than others. Let's put it that way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mhm.
this is my Silmarillion for Star
Yeah.
Wars.
Interesting because like both Silmarillion and Rings of Power together. At least my idea was Rings of Power. Yours is how it's connecting with the two, if you will. Although
Sort
I'd
of.
say is Silmarillion, from what I understand, that would go back, like the equivalent would be going back from Dawn of the Jedi to
Pretty
Old
much.
Republic. Right?
Yeah, pretty much
Or
Dawn of the
at
Jedi.
least at least parts of the Silver, like Baron Luthien, these things that, I mean, there's another way of tying it in, right? Things in phase one, say 5,000, they would be ancient history. They'd be legends, lowercase l, in phases 2 and 3. You know,
That's true.
I mean, that kind of the way, the way, um, even the kind of the not so much the nameless themselves. I guess at the beginning of phase one, in the beginning, the idea of the nameless are. or like the path of the open hand, I think Crix Camerats and Jean Morales people, there's just kind of this into the midst of time, then also the Nile. So yeah, that they have ways of connecting more subtly. Um,
This is when
and,
Jeddah
and
will
and the
be the
reason I
city.
thought of that is, I was watching a thing about Rings of Power and how, um, on in that statue in Oregon holding that jewel, that could be a Silmaril. Like there is the Silmarils are this ancient lore history. Um, I mean, we talk about biblical epic, right? The Old Testament is an ancient history in the New Testament. It's not foreign. They believe it's the same people and everything, but yeah, here we go. I gotta bring this banner up. Gotta bring this banner up. You know,
I mean, this would be Star Wars Old Testament, I guess, in
you
a
would
way.
very much. Well, sort of, but like the New Testament is, you know, trying to have these ancient texts as meaningful stories in their time,
Mhm.
just like we would have, in 2024, we have these ancient stories as meaningful texts in our time that are familiar with enough for us in our culture, and they would have been intimately familiar with these stories. I guess that's the thing. Like we're so like this is so this old republic is so this weird fantasy. Um, it's probably why they went High Republic, because it's only 200 years. It is so clearly there's so much that's was familiar from day one, right? From the first page of Flight of the Jedi, that's familiar to Star Wars. We can say, maybe they'll have to do something like with Yoda in Tales of the Jedi, the comic, right? Where that at least grounds that as something that Yoda was familiar with. And so have some way of saying, okay, this is a familiar story to people in the universe. They might have to be able to do that. So, and that's another way of saying,
Well, we got
like
moment. We got moment.
we got moment, we have things that are already built up. Um, but then also then to say, events, you know, it isn't quite 5,000 years. It's like 1,000 years, between, I guess, David and Jesus. It's 1,000 years. Uh, there's an interpretation and a reflection there. It isn't like there isn't, and also looking back at a golden age to some extent. So there, and a cautionary tale. So again, it isn't like there's no connection between the two eras. There's a very intimate connection, very clear connection. The New Testament authors are find it very important to make the connection. So yeah, I think we can have something similar in these stories, even if it's such a wide swath, 5,000 years, 2,000 years, whatever. Um, they will have to do that somehow in order for it to be considered this coherent single story spread over so much time. But we have these real world examples. There we go. I'm answering my own question is what I'm doing, but
I thought of a weird thing just recently, also
yeah.
about the anthology way of doing it. What if
Mhm.
instead of anthology forward, what about anthology back? So, like, phase one is the Bane War. And phase
Yeah.
two is like a war that's even earlier. Maybe like that's where the Mandos started hating on the Jedi, and then like the last phase is the first Sith Jedi War. That's just sort of a weird anthology thing I just thought of. With like,
Yeah.
I
I
don't
guess I
know.
wonder what, because here's the thing I'm describing,
Mhm.
it's anthology on the surface, but really just under the surface, it is a deeply interconnected story, right?
Oh yeah, but yeah,
Like you have the Bible, it is an anthology. You got these was 66 or 73 books, whoever's counting. That's a whole other conversation. Um, these books, but you know, in Jesus' time, there was this belief that they're all coherent, and then a few centuries later, this idea that they're all just under the surface. There is a deeper unity to them. Again, we'd have to say, we have to have characters in universe believing that the Force is creating this deeper unity. Again, I think that might be wise to have some sort of framing device. Um, I mean, it would weaken it a little bit. Again, that's the thing. I guess with Tales of the Jedi, it's just like a one little letter prescript with Yoda, right? That's the only time he shows up.
No, I don't think Yoda ever shows up in Tales of the Jedi.
Like at the very beginning, he has this thing of, "Oh yeah, thousands of years ago, my young
I don't
Padawan."
think that happens.
I'm
I'll
pretty
have to.
sure.
I don't. I don't think so, but I'll check again.
Framing device tells of the. So all this, we're just figuring out how this is gonna,
That would be
you know,
interesting for a framing device for sure. But
yeah,
I mean, I feel like you would do that in a screen thing though, because then you can gotta have.
yeah. So I'm pretty sure I remember him. Remember like it's and they've done that with the Yoda comic, the Canon comic. Um, kind of he's on the framing device. He's on Dagobah, and he's thinking back to the High Republic era, and he's thinking back to the Clone Wars.
True. I don't think Tales of the Jedi has a framing device, but I mean, a framing device wouldn't be a bad idea. So
Not so much a recurring framing device. I don't mean that. I mean a one-off. So
that'd
like,
be
yeah,
cool.
I know like the Tales of the Jedi comic. There's a one-off where he's kind of grounding it in the world we know before
Huh.
launching us into the unfamiliar.
I'll have to look at
So
that. Look that up. But if you find it, let me send it to me. That'd be
yeah,
cool. Good.
I mean all that to say, this could really work, and I think I think this is what everyone wants. So
They want some version of this. I don't know if they want the exact version we talked about, but they want
no,
something like this for sure.
um,
And I do think they want. I think Lucasfilm wants to do it. I mean, we've always heard rumblings, and
yeah,
who knows if that also has to do with that Old Republic remake that's never going to happen. Um,
yeah,
but I
rather
wonder if they've
different.
been waiting for that, and it's like they're just gonna
Mhm.
like oh forget it. Who knows? But
I mean, maybe that's one last thing to say. Maybe that is they're also waiting for the Mangold film because maybe that is the way to build off of that, but also connecting it with how does this connect? I mean, I think part of your idea with the other initiative was how does this connect with what we know? I think this would do it even stronger because at least with the first phase of 5,000 years, it's early enough that some events and threads they would be ancient. It wouldn't be prehistoric myth. It would still be just ancient history to that time period. And so that could be another theme is um, time and history and memory. So kind of like how Reith Silas is going to show up and save the day by reflecting on history and memory. So by having a sense of history, there's going to be maybe more characters that do.
right.
So yeah.
Well, before we wrap this up, I
I
think.
mean,
Oh,
so good. I was
oh,
just gonna say, I think there's one last good question. I
oh,
don't know
sure,
what
yeah,
we're gonna go.
yeah.
Like in terms of this is from Chris's question here. In terms of scope, which is one thing we've touched on a little bit.
Mhm.
And I think the answer depends on uh what story. When do they tell it? Really?
Yeah, and I actually was just about to talk about this, where it's sort of
Okay.
like I do think it's quite possible
Hmm.
that a post Tross journey to NGO small scale thing could happen.
Hmm.
You know, just a few, maybe a adult book, young adult book,
Yeah.
comic, mini
Hmm.
of some. Here's Ray post Tross. Here's a couple adventures she had. And this is how this will
Yeah.
thematically tie in with the movie.
And
If
Poe being
not,
the leader and things like that. Yeah.
yeah, um, stuff like that. I mean, who knows? Maybe Rose is the leader. Maybe Rose is the chancellor. By you're gonna be getting her political career. Chancellor Rose. Let's
I
do
will
it.
vote for her.
Me too. I will vote
Hmm.
for her too. I think that will happen. Let me look at the
Hmm.
other one. I think I think I think the others, with the exception of the Old Republic, Dawn of the Galactic Republic thing, are more in that, and maybe that Mangle thing that I had
Hmm.
are more in that just kind of organically. there's no grand plan. It's just sort of
Yeah.
like, let's just tell books that kind of naturally build on each other over time, as Star Wars books have always kind of done anyway. Um,
Or at least a vague idea, a general idea, you
well,
know.
yeah, a kind of a vague idea of like, here's some key events that happened in this time period, so books can kind of like build on each
Yeah.
other with that. Um,
Mhm.
and then of course, the big ones are going to be the Old Republic thing that we just talked about, and of course my curveball, the before the Old Republic, but after Dawn of the Jedi initiative, where
Mhm.
you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's how you would judge the scope
Yeah.
of these things.
It's interesting, none of all of these things, what this another thing this kind of reveals to me is, um, I'm guessing they get pitches for, say, I want to write a random story of a random Jedi set 700, or random whoever, random plumber or pilot or whoever, um,
Random Sith Lord.
random Sith Lord. Uh, um, and that they're less likely to take that because these sort of grand historical events have to build the world. And yeah, and that's the thing is they're more likely to think in terms, the story group is more likely to think in terms of these grander historical eras and events and moments, and having the weighty thing. And this reminds me of, last week's episode when I wrote weightier stories, but also, a few months ago, maybe a year ago, we had the same choosing when and how long back a story happens and how much time they give. And it seems kind of arbitrary, but no, we have these real world precedents and whatnot. So I think, like, the reason for those distinct eras, there are these sort of gravity wells of story pocket that the story is more likely to focus on, that we've kind of identified here. I mean, even
Mhm.
the one that is less, this transition from High Republic to Late Republic. I mean, they did a whole Hawken live action series kicking that off, right?
Getting
That
Dawn of the
roughly.
Jedi. We're
No,
getting
no, I mean the transition from High Republic to Late
right.
Republic. But yeah, then they have a whole Hawken film at the very beginning. So yeah,
I
um,
mean, we do know. I remember. I think I talked to you about this. Like,
yeah,
Hedlund pitched the Acolyte as, she didn't go into like, I want to make a High Republic show.
yeah,
She said, I want to make a show about this, and then or the powers that be at Lucasfilm was like, hey, we got this initiative thing going. This will kind of work parallel to this. Like, okay. So,
yeah,
like, I'm sure even with screen, it's like they have pitches, and then it's like, how can we make this work? And then, okay, here we go. You know, and we know they wanted to do a Dawn of the Jedi thing for a while, going back to the Game of Thrones dudes and even
yeah, in often ways, yeah.
Guillermo del Toro. So it's like, okay, we definitely have something.
Hmm. So
I'm sure authors have to go through the pitch process too, and then kind of like, okay, let's make it work.
yeah, so it's exciting. It's an exciting time. I mean, High Republic set a huge precedent for this kind of thinking in terms of eras and gravity wells. So did Wendig and Aftermath, right? And so yeah,
And
uh,
Mandoverse to a little bit too.
yeah, Mandoverse, all these different ways of them telling the story of Star Wars. I still do want Rise of the Confederacy and Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Anakin becoming the brash, kind of horny.
But they got an era for that too. It's called the Fall of the Jedi era.
Yeah, this whole Fall of the Jedi era. And again, we got this audio book that dropped on Thursday to kick that off. So, anyway, yeah, that's all I got.
That's all I got too. I think we are good.
One last thing to say. Yes, it is. It is. Rings of Power season 2 is great. But yeah, as Joel mentioned, it's a good place to wrap this up. Thanks for joining us, everyone. If you let us know what you thought, what do you think of all the kind of the options we presented? If you have another idea entirely, please, all ears. Love hearing your creativity and ideas of
Can I just say
when.
one more thing
Yeah,
before
go
we,
for it.
we go?
Yeah.
Low key, I kind of hope that when they do announce the next thing, and it's not in terms of like a big thing, not just necessarily a rise or journey to cross thing,
Yeah,
not journey to NGO. We keep doing that thing, but like the next kind of High Republic style big thing.
yeah.
Loki don't want it to be any of these. I hope they like give us a real curveball. Like
Give us a
do some
curveball.
like I'd be kind of like there's a little bit of that chaos part of me that's like give us a curveball. Show us what you
Yeah,
really got. Like ooh.
yeah. Think outside the box. Why not?
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, all ears.
Mhm.
I mean, these ones seem to make the most sense, but
I guess.
we could be wrong. Let us know if you think you like one of these ideas. If you want a High Republic style, Luminous style thing for the era between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, go for it. Let us know. Um, yeah, if you think we're out to lunch, if you hated High Republic, let us know. There we go. Those comment boxes ain't going anywhere. Either way, please do give this video a like and a share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. So this was another good one. This was another fun way thinking about Star Wars and story and how things could work. So yeah, let's keep that up. Where can they find you on the internet?
You can find me at JID2021, again, JID2021 on Twitter. And of course, follow us at the Ion Can Pod, EYEONCANONPOD. And of course, on the Star Wars Underworld Discord.
There we go. Yes, you can follow. Yeah, check that at the Discord. Also, another way to engage, just add us, tag us. You're in there. I'm in there. Ben's in there. Tag Ben. Ask Ben what he wants for his half birthday. Tag him and ask him that. There we go. There, it's in a month. Yeah, so check that out. You can follow me on Instagram and Threads at MNEUG1138. Instagram at beaches.foodie, FOODIE. And also yeah, on Twitter, NEUG485. Of course, at Iron Cannon Pod, EYEONCANONPOD on Wednesday. We are Chris, if you were still watching, I bit off more than I can chew. Trying to summarize 4.5 years of comics in about 2 hours. We'll see, figure out how well this works.
It'll be fun to watch.
It'll be fun. Yeah. Well, I think I got a handle on it, but yeah, we're gonna look back and just tell the whole swath of what worked and what maybe didn't, but mostly what worked and what we enjoyed, and just looking back at the story that was Star Wars comics, especially between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and everything that wonderfully happened in that time period. That's this Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, right here on Underworld YouTube, Underworld Facebook, Underworld
I feel
Twitch.
bad that
and
we didn't talk about comic events when we did this.
Well, we include comics in this, but I also did mention these crossovers from ESB to Return of the Jedi. I mean, they had a Slack chat too. It counts. It was also closer thing too, but yeah, we definitely include comics in all these publishing initiatives for sure. The High Republic comics have been, I think, have been pretty important, especially Phase 3. Pretty darn important. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, which Chris and I were going to keep watching High Republic, doing High Republic comics. We are in January. We're definitely going to be reviewing Bad Batch, Ghosts. What's this called? What's this thing called? Ghost Agents, the Bad Batch Ghost Agents. So check that out. But yeah, this Wednesday, chatting comics from the last 4.5 years. So please do check that out. All right, I think that about does it this week. Next week, pretty important. Next week is here in Canada. It's Truth and Reconciliation Day, and so we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna want to make good on that day. I get the day off from work to study and reflect, and so I want to make good on that and say Indigenous issues, Indigenous stories, Indigenous struggles in Star Wars.
Indigenous authors and writers, maybe in the future.
Rebecca Rowan Horse, especially in the future. Let's get more of those. There's been I can think of one. I think. We'd also talk about the Navajo and Ojibwe, A New Hope. It's another example, but
The Maori, because we got 10.
Yeah, Maori, but also Tuscans, and also Jawas, and especially Tuscans. So yeah, we're gonna chat all about that Next week, very, very important topic, especially here in Canada, but all throughout the world. So we'll dive right in. Joel, it's been another good one. Till then, let's blow this thing and head home.